In this video, I will talk about OpenLDAP Authentication. Now, LDAP is an open protocol to validate or authenticate users against a directory server. I showed you in the previous how to connect the Fortigate firewall to Microsoft Active Directory and allow users to log in using their AD domain credentials. So in this video, I will also show you a different solution using an open source directory server called OpenLDAP. Now, before I show you this, it's important to understand that all directory servers have a specific tree hierarchy, so they are using specific terms like domain component or DC, organizational unit or OU, common names, and object classes. So for every object that is added to a directory server, there is a specific naming schema and a specific tree hierarchy that they follow. And it's important to understand this when adding object to the firewall. Now, also security is very important when we're talking about username and passwords and a directory that contains a lot of sensitive information about your users. It's important to secure this traffic at rest and also in transit. To enforce this, we are going to be using secure protocol called LDAP-S or LDAP over TLS. So this means we are encrypting the traffic that contains the sensitive information when we are trying to authenticate users against a directory server. Also, we are trying to mask the communication, and instead of using the default LDAP ports, we are trying to use custom ports to make it harder to guess and make it harder to hack, additionally adding one more layer of security. Now, the practical Fortigate uses for OpenLDAP authentication is to allow your users to access different firewall services or resources using their directory credentials. For example, you may allow users to log into an SSL-VPN for working from home or accessing corporate resources remotely, or captive portal, which is used for different authentication uses, maybe for guest Wi-Fi, maybe for moving traffic between a trusted and untrusted segments of the network. You are also able to add firewall policies and different segregation using the username or the user group that they belong to. Also, one very useful feature for this communication is you are able to track user usage based on their username that they are logged in. This is especially useful if you have a single computer with multiple users connecting to it or logging to it. So instead of seeing all the firewall logs with a single IP address, you are able to see IP address and username correlation for the time period the user is signed in. So it gives you more control and more visibility. So now let's take a look at the implementation steps for this video. First, I'm gonna start an OpenLDAP server on my computer using a Docker container. Now, if you're new to Docker containers, I'll try to make this as simple as possible, but Docker allows you to build application and port it to any operating system. So if I were to build something using Docker on Windows, I can port the same application to Linux or Mac with the same exact steps. I do not have to install any dependency. Everything is already included in the Docker container itself. And every application in Docker is called an image. So the image I will be using in this video already contains a sample users and groups for testing. So it's already populated with a few fake username and password, and they are added to different groups for simulation. So this is very useful to help us jumpstart this video quickly without having to add all these things in the back end. And the single command we're going to use for starting this container that you will also see in the video description and comment is called docker run. So by using docker run, we asking the computer to run a specific container. And also a few explanation for what all these words mean. The --rm basically mean a cleanup, meaning when we remove this application, all the temporary file will be removed right after. So in a production environment, you do not want this option. In fact, in a production environment, you would want to secure the server very well and also have redundancy and high availability. So you would have multiple servers. In case one of them go down, you want to be able to authenticate your users. And also we are exposing two ports, or we are opening two ports. One is 10389, which basically a masked version of the 389, the original LDAP port. So this is part of a security added to the container. And the reason you see the number twice is you are able to change the number outside the container or inside the container based on how is it set up. So for now, the port is already masked, so I'm not changing this. This will be the listening port that everybody can connect to for LDAP communication. And also LDAP secure or LDAP over TLS uses port 636. Now it's masked behind 10636. So these two ports are masked, and finally the image name and the author of the image that will be downloaded from the internet. So this single command can basically start an OpenLDAP server for us in a few seconds. Now the second step is we need to supply the Fortigate the access credential or the IP address and information for this directory server. This is done in the Fortigate side under user and authentication LDAP servers. We will then confirm the user connectivity, confirm we are able to log in using the sample data or the sample users, and then we will test in the CLI to make sure we are reading the group membership of our users. This is very important because the default installation of OpenLDAP does not have this option enabled. So we need to understand which groups each member is connected to so we can restrict access based on these groups. The next step is we need to create some sort of a user mappings between the LDAP server and the Fortigate to make sure we are importing the specific groups and specific users that we wanted to allow to go through the firewall for different access levels. And then I will use SSL-VPN for testing. So I will create a few SSL-VPN portals, and then I will modify the settings and the portal mappings to allow these settings to work together. Very similar to IPsec VPN, SSL-VPN, which I'm going to use for testing, require a firewall policy, so I will show you how to do this quickly, and then we will be able to test the LDAP user login. Let's get started. So now I logged into a server where I'm trying to deploy this Docker container. As you see, this server has the IP address 10.1.10.12. So first I want to confirm Docker is running by doing docker-v, and this will tell me the Docker version installed. So now I will start by deploying the Docker container using the command in the video description. And as you see, once I click enter, this command will basically download the image if you don't have it already. And in just a few seconds, you will see the server would start working. And as simple as that, I have an OpenLDAP server running. So now I need to go in the firewall and make sure I'm able to read the server. The way I would reach this server is using the IP address 10.1.10.12 on port 10636 for LDAP secure. So I'm going to go in my Fortigate firewall under user and authentication, LDAP servers, and I'm going to create a server for OpenLDAP. I will add the IP address in here, 10.1.10.12. As you see in here, the default port is the 389, which is the LDAP regular traffic. So we want to switch it to secure traffic, LDAP secure. And you will see in here it changed automatically to 636. Now we definitely need this to be 10636 to match our configuration. Now as you see in here, the DN or the distinguished name is something you can actually browse for. So as you see in here, this is the sample data in my directory that come with the Planet Express com name. And it has an organizational unit, which is a way to organize people inside the directory. So I'm just going to select this and click OK. And as you see in here, it added the information from the directory automatically. Now, in a more production environment, you would want to change your communication to regular and actually add a username and a password that has read access to the directory. But since this lab environment allows me to do this simply without login, I'm using the simple option in this case. So now we need to test the communication by doing test connectivity. As you see now, I have access to the directory. Also, if I go to the PowerShell, it would show me this kind of communication since I have the container connected. So you will see in here, there is a communication between 10.1.10.1, which is the firewall IP address for that interface, and it's using TLS and connecting to directory server. You'll also see all kind of searches and result, all kind of directory specific commands. So now I need to be able to test the user credential. And for this, I will refer to the GitHub page from the creator of this image, where he listed all the test accounts that we can use in this directory. So this is my username and this is my password. And you will see in here, I'm able to connect and I'm able to validate these passwords. So now everything should be good to go. I'm gonna go ahead and save the server. Now, for some reason, this version of the Fortigate OS, version 7.0 to be specific, automatically revert the LDAP secure port to 636. So now I do not have connection anymore. And this could be a bug in the software, could be also in different versions. But since this firewall does not have any software updates, let's see how we can fix it in a different way. So I'm using this example to show you different workarounds to deal with the software bugs. So I'm going to go ahead under config user LDAP, and this also could be a good example to show you how the configuration look in the CLI level. So my server in here, OpenLDAP that I just created, 10.1.10.12, OU people, planetexpress.com, LDAP secure, however the port got reverted. So let's open this OpenLDAP server entry, and let's change the port to 10.636. And once I save, I should be able to force the firewall to use the correct value and overcome this issue. So now the second step is to also search by CLI to make sure I'm able to see the user group. For this, I will use the command diagnose test authserver, and then you're able to use a server like LDAP or even Radius. The server name in this case is called OpenLDAP. That's how I named it. And then I also have to supply the username and the password. So I'm going to try this name. And then we also have to supply the password. So as you see in here, authentication is succeeded for this username. And it's shown me the group membership. He's part of a group called Ship Crew under the same OU people domain component planetexpress.com. So we are able to authenticate the user using the GUI and the CLI. So now we should be able to create the mapping between the OpenLDAP server and the Fortigate IAM or the user identity. So for this, you have two different options. If you have a small set of users, you can add users individually under user definition. For example, you can create new user. And instead of creating a local Fortigate user on the Fortigate itself, you can create remote radius, remote TechX, or remote LDAP. So when you choose remote LDAP, it allows you to choose which directory to read the users from. So all these sample data are in my directory. I can choose all the users that I want, or I can choose multiple ones and then add them to my usernames, and this would allow these specific 3 users to log in but not anybody else. However, when you have a lot of users or a big company and a big directory, adding users individually is not very realistic and is not easy to manage. You're also going to increase the database of the Fortigate exponentially if you add a lot of users. So instead, the better way to do it is to utilize the groups that exist in a directory server tree to make it more easier to manage. And for this, I'm going to user groups. So by creating a user group, I can choose a specific remote group in my directory and act as if it's also a user group in the firewall. So only single entry for the whole group. So to show you this, I will go under the remote group section and I will try also to fetch the group names from the LDAP server. As you see in here, I have 2 different groups. I have one called admin staff and I have one called Ship Crew. So I will create one for the admin staff by selecting the group and click add selected. So now I have my admin staff under the people OU, and I will call it the same name, admin staff. And now I will also create a second one for my second group. So under also the same OpenLDAP server, I have my ship crew. And I'll also call it the same name, ship crew user group. Now I just need to configure my test application. So in this case, I will use my SSL-VPN settings and SSL-VPN portals to emulate this. So I'll create two portals for my admin staff and ship crew groups to differentiate between them and give them different access level, maybe different customization and different bookmarks to access in a VPN environment. The first one will be my admin staff. I do not want to allow them the tunnel mode right now. I just want the web mode where we can see the differences. And for this, I will call it the admin staff portal and give them a specific design. And then I will save the first one. And then I'll create a second one for my ship crew. I will also disable tunnel mode and give it a specific name, specific design. And then I'll click OK. So now these are my two portals that I will use for testing the login. Second setting is to go under SSL VPN settings, and we need to enable this portal to work. So we need to allow the users to log in using a specific interface they can reach. I'll just use the same one connected to the server for now, which is DMZ. Now, basically, HTTPS port is also used for management, so we would like to try something that is not interfering with the management port. Or we can disable the management port in here, but I'd like to mask it a little bit. I can use anything. Maybe I'll use just 3389, which is definitely not a typical HTTPS port, but you can use whatever you want. And then in here, we need to define the authentication portal mapping. So we have two different user groups. First one is the admin staff. We want to allow the admin staff to log in using the admin staff portal we just created. So as simple as that, we have mapping between a user group and SSL VPN portal. Very similarly, we can add a second one here for my ship crew. Also connect them to their respective portal. And now all my access is correctly defined in here. The users will use 10.1.10.1 port 3389 to log into the browser. Let's copy this as well and then save the settings. So now everything in here is perfect. We just need to go ahead and create a firewall policy to allow this traffic to work. This is especially needed if you have the tunnel mode enabled. So for now, you will see in here, you need a policy that originates from the SSL VPN tunnel interface. This is a virtual interface that allows users to jump from an SSL VPN connection to specific resources in your network. And usually for this kind of policy, you would leave the source IP address to all, but you will restrict by the user logging in. Because there is no way IP addresses can get in here without login. So we will use the user, admin staff, and ship crew in the policy and allow them whatever access we need. As long as the incoming interface SSL VPN is chosen, the access will start working. So now my policy is correct. Now I just need to start testing this access. So I will open a new page and I will try to go to the specific link. 10.1.10.13389. This is my SSL VPN portal. So you will see in here, this is very similar to the admin login with just specific different colors. So I'm going to go ahead and try to use any of these credentials. Let's go ahead to the bottom and see which user belong to which group. So you will see in here, this is the ship crew and this is the admin staff. There are two users in the admin staff group and there are 3 different users in the ship crew. So we will use one from each group to test different access levels. So let's go ahead and copy this name and try this name first. So this will be my username and the password should be in here. So as you see in here, this directed me to the admin staff portal. I'm able to log in using my Hobart identity. and I'm able to do quick connection or access different things in the environment. So let's go ahead and test a different user. And as you see, using the different group, it showed me the different portal using the portal mappings. Now, one way you can easily see these communication and verify these login credentials, you can go ahead to log and report, events, and all these events should be under VPN events. So for example, when you see tunnel up, you can see that Philip J. Fry from ship crew had login at specific time, and it will also show you when they log out. You will also see that even if a user entered the correct password, but they do not have permission because they are not added to the specific groups that we allowed, they will also show as permission denied. So all these logs will help you define all malicious attacks and all issues in your environment. And that's how you connect an OpenLDAP server to your FortiGate firewall. Thank you for watching.